My name is Rob Breener. I'm from the Department of Organisational Psychology here at Birkbeck, and I'm going to talk to you today about the courses we run. Because this is actually being filmed, I'm not going to take questions as we go along, so if you do have questions, leave them till the end and I'll deal with them then, okay? So what I want to talk about is firstly to introduce you a little bit to the college and to the Department of Organisational Psychology, talk about some of the things we do in the department, a little bit about the aims of the courses we run and the structure, talk about different modes of study, the pace of study, and also then talk a little bit about studying in time management, talk a bit about our virtual learning environment, which we call Blackboard, a little bit about the materials we use, and talk about places, and then just summarise at the end. So the purpose really is just to give you an overview of the courses we run and what's involved in doing them, and a little bit about the context of the department. So Birkbeck College, as I'm sure probably most of you know by now, is almost 200 years old. It was set up originally to provide part-time education for working people, although now, as you'll see in my presentation, we're increasing the number of full-time courses we actually do. So there's more of them. There's still not many, but there are a few now. The Department of Organisational Psychology is certainly the oldest Department of Organisational Psychology possibly in the world, and was set up in 1962. It's also the major provider, probably in Europe actually, professional training in organisational psychology and related areas, and we also have a strong international research presence. So at the moment in the department is a group of around 10 academics, all of whom are active in researching in the area of organisational psychology, which also makes us one of the biggest groupings of researchers as well, certainly in the UK. What kind of research do we do? Well, we research a wide range of topics in organisational psychology and organisational behaviour. We have quite a strong PhD programme as well. Most of the people on that are part-time, but we have some full-timers as well. And there's lots of reasons why we think research is important, but I guess from your point of view today, one of the reasons we think research is very important is because it informs our teaching. I was talking to someone earlier in the open evening out there, talking about the use of textbooks versus journal articles. We very much place emphasis on reading journal articles, the latest research, academic research, rather than textbooks, because for all sorts of reasons, textbooks become out of date, they tend to quite oversimplify things. So it's fairly, in our department, we like to think it's quite research-led teaching in a way. Partly our own research, but also research that's generally out there in the research community. So what do we teach? We teach a number of master's programs and postgraduate diplomas. So we have the MSc in Occupational Psychology, the MSc in Organisational Behaviour, and a more recent MSc in Human Resource Management, an MSc in Career Management and Counselling, and two postgraduate diploma and a postgraduate certificate around career counselling and coaching. And we also do teaching as a department for undergraduate students, both in the psychology department here at Birkbeck and also the management department. So we have quite a wide portfolio of courses we run in a sort of fairly specialised department. What are the aims of the course? Well, what we always say to people is the aims of all our courses really are relatively academic. What we mean by that is the courses we run are not, for example, in the case of occupational psychology, they're not designed to tell you how to do it in practice. They're designed, though, to give you the information, the knowledge, the theory, the evidence behind some of the practices that our occupational psychologists and HRM professionals might engage in organisations. So it's to give you a critical appreciation and to develop your critical thinking skills and give you knowledge around organisational behaviour and organisational psychology and career counselling, for example, rather than tell you how to do it. It's not a toolkit approach, or rather the toolkit we're giving you is, I guess, a kind of intellectual one to analyse and understand ideas and research for yourselves, because we believe that's much more important than telling you how to do stuff for a whole range of reasons. We draw on the social sciences, including psychology and sociology, but others as well. So we're not just completely fixed in a narrow range of just organisational psychology. We look around to other disciplines to help us address some of the questions that arise in organisational psychology context. So what's the course structure? Well, the compulsory modules for programs, the MSc in Occupational Psychology and the MSc in Organisational Behaviour are essentially identical courses, but they have different entry requirements. I can take questions on that later if you want. The MSc in HRM is the same really as MSc in OP and OB, but it has dedicated HRM only modules in year 2 to cover that aspect of the course. The MSc in Career Management Counselling and Postgraduate Diploma in Career Counselling Consultancy has selected modules from the organisational behaviour and organisational psychology courses, but also has specific modules itself, which I'll talk about in a second. The teaching is in tutor groups of mixed degree students, so if you're on the programme you won't just necessarily be with other organisational psychologists, other people doing the MSc in career counselling and coaching. You'll be with a mix of other people, and also the MSc research project is something we put a lot of emphasis on, given it's a research-led teaching to some extent. We also think it's very important you learn at least how to do one piece of research and the implications of that. So that's equivalent to 2 assessments, the project itself. In terms of the MSc in Career Management and Counselling and the postgraduate diploma, there is obviously a specialist career counselling and coaching module, which is different from the other modules that you'll take, in that it's very practically focused and it's around skills. So there's 7 skills days each year, which are all held on Fridays at Birkbeck. The certificate is 10 days in 1 year. There's intensive training around those skills in small groups, and it's assessed by submission of CDs and transcripts, plus a final skills essay in year 2. So that bit of the programme, that bit of the programme is different in a sense from the other ones, but I guess you'd expect it to be. What modes of study are available? Well, there's traditional face-to-face evening teaching that Birkbeck's, I guess, famous for, and that consists of 2 evenings a week if you're doing it part-time from 6 till 9 o'clock. The other thing our department has been doing for a long time now, at least 20 years I think, is something we call network learning, and this involves computer conferencing, which is basically you use the internet and the system we have to talk to each other around particular questions and issues, and I'll talk about that a bit more in a second. Also network learning, there's 5 weekend workshops over 2 years. Those weekend workshops run from Friday evening to Sunday lunchtime. They're quite intensive. You have lectures during that time from members of staff, but also it'll give you a chance to work with and talk to other people in your tutor group. For full-time study, it's a combination of evening and network learning, and whatever mode of teaching you're doing, whether it's computer conferencing or evening teaching, attendance is a requirement. So obviously in the evening in classrooms we monitor your attendance, at weekends we have to monitor your attendance, and likewise your contributions to the computer conferencing we're also required to monitor. So you have to actually attend and take part and participate. In terms of pace of study, the programme runs traditionally for 2 years part-time, though recently we started the equivalent of a 1-year accelerated full-time course. There's a break in studies option after the first term, and if you want to spread out your study for personal, professional, or other reasons, you can actually extend your study to 4 years, to a maximum of 4 years. And if you do that, there's a part-time continuation fee payable, I believe, after 2 years, which is 1/3 of the annual fee. So if you feel that the demands of the course are too much, or you have other demands in your life which mean you can't contribute as much as you want, you can spread it out, and people do take that option. Studying and time management, what we recommend is that people set aside and make sure they've got time to study for at least 16 hours per week during term time, and that includes attending lectures and computer conferencing for part-time students, and around double that, of course, for full-time students. You need to also build in time to attend libraries, though much of the material you'll need will be available online through the Birkbeck Library. Also time for travelling, both to weekend workshops and to come here if you're doing evening teaching. But also it's worth bearing in mind the network learning option gives you much greater flexibility. So the attendance you have in network learning is just to those weekend workshops, whereas the attendance for face-to-face is 2 nights a week, actually physically here. So something to bear in mind when you're thinking about which option, which mode of study might be better for you. So Blackboard is our virtual learning environment. I mean, there's many different kinds. Some of you may come across this one called Blackboard, or there's others called Moodle, for example. And it's an online learning environment which gives you quick and easy access to materials. It also has a student interactive area where you, with other people in your tutor group, can actually communicate with each other. There's also separate conferences and separate discussion groups where we actually do the teaching. It's also, the department is paperless, so we won't physically ever give you copies of stuff. Everything you need is available on that system as PDFs, so we don't give you anything in terms of bits of paper. All the materials that you need are provided online via Blackboard, and the course materials for any particular module, if we take, for example, the module Motivation and Performance, all the materials for Motivation and Performance will be available online and consist of a course text and overview. Normally those course texts and overviews have been written by a member of staff here, who basically try and take you through their view about what that field, in this case motivation and performance, is like and how it's developed. So as well as that, there'll be key readings for each course, anything between, I think, maybe 20 and 30 articles we'd recommend you read for each course, key readings, but also other recommended readings. And generally speaking, for the whole course, we say you need to read over and above the material provided. In other words, the material we provide is enough to get you through, but particularly at master's level, we expect you to study on your own and look outside the stuff we recommend. So again, in the case of motivation performance, even one small topic in motivation performance, we might recommend 1 or 2 journal articles, but there might be hundreds out there. And we don't expect you to read hundreds, we do expect you to perhaps look a bit more than just the 2 we've given you to get a feel for the area in a way. Online teaching, going back to the motivation performance example, works essentially by discussing in your tutor group over a 2-week period a set of topics that are set at the beginning of term. So for example, in the case of motivation performance, you may have a topic to discuss, something like, is pay a motivator? So that's the question you're required to discuss. You will have some required reading that goes along with that. And during a 2-week period, you and the other people in your tutor group and your tutor will have a discussion online. We also allocate roles. One individual in the group will be chosen to be what we call a starter. They will read the required reading, summarise it and get the discussion going at the beginning of the 2-week period. Over that 2-week period, every individual is required to chip in several times to make comments, to add to the discussion. The tutor also will be doing that as well. And at the end of the 2-week period, someone is allocated to be what we call a finisher, and they will summarise or try to summarise the discussion that's gone on in that 2-week period. So essentially it's quite an active way of learning. You will have to read the material carefully, you have to comment on what other people have said, but a lot of people report it's very good for dragging them along, giving them traction, keeping them engaged with the material over the course of the programme. So what numbers of places do we have? Well, for network learning we have around up to 100. For career management consultancy and career counselling consultancy it's 20, and for evening study something between 60 and 100. They're the number of places we have. So they're quite big master's programmes, and say very well established master's programmes as well. So just to summarise what I've been saying, the courses do require quite a lot of commitment, hard work and good time management skills, but it is a very rewarding course and it isn't internationally recognised. It gives you lots of opportunities for networking with other people on the programme and for peer learning, because clearly many of the people that come to Birkbeck have considerable work experience. Some have already been working in some of these fields already, so what they bring to that programme, and this programme, is very important. It also gives you critical appreciation of the disciplines, and of course it is highly relevant probably to your own work experience, either experience you already have or experience you will have. In terms of making it relevant, we don't do that for you, that's your job. What we do is give you the academic foundations for the kinds of work you might be doing in the fields of the fields I've been talking about. Okay, thank you very much.